Senator Cruz, you are a first-term senator as well. Your opponents say you, like Senator Rubio, are not prepared to be commander-in-chief. You have talked tough about threats we face in the Mideast. It was reported just moments ago that the North Koreans test-launched an intercontinental ballistic missile. North Korea has nuclear weapons and conducted another nuclear test just last month. The missile that was launched is the kind the North Koreans hope could someday carry a nuclear weapon capable of reaching the United States. How would you respond if commander-in-chief to that launch?
Well, I would note initially the fact that we're seeing the launch, and we're seeing the launch from a nuclear North Korea, is the direct result of the failures of the first Clinton administration. The Clinton administration led the world in relaxing sanctions against North Korea. Billions of dollars flowed into North Korea in exchange for promises not to build nuclear weapons. They took those billions and built nuclear weapons. And I would note also the lead negotiator in that failed North Korea sanctions deal was a woman named Wendy Sherman, who Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton promptly recruited to come back to be the lead negotiator with Iran. So what we are seeing with North Korea is foreshadowing of where we will be with Iran. With respect to North Korea and what we should do now, one of the first things we should do is expand our missile defense capacity. We ought to put missile defense interceptors in South Korea. South Korea wants them. And one of the real risks of this launch, North Korea wants to launch a satellite. And one of the greatest risks of the satellite is they would place a nuclear device in the satellite as they would orbit around the Earth, and as it got over the United States, they would detonate that nuclear weapon and set off what's called an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, which could take down the entire electrical grid on the eastern seaboard, potentially killing millions. We need to harden the grid to defend ourselves, and we need missile defense to protect ourselves against North Korea.
Well, let me ask you this. If you were commander-in-chief tonight, would you have ordered the U.S. military to destroy that missile preemptively on the launch pad to prevent North Korea from becoming an even graver threat?
You know, at this point, I'm not going to speculate on that without the intelligence briefing that any commander-in-chief would have, knowing what exactly is there. One of the real problems...
Senator Cruz, let me tell you this. You have talked tough about the Mideast. You haven't gotten those intelligence briefings about that. Why not tell us whether you would preemptively strike a missile on a launch pad that threatens the U.S.?
Actually, with respect, I have gotten the intelligence briefings on the Mideast. Those have been going on for many years. I haven't gotten the intelligence briefing tonight on what North Korea is doing because I'm here in New Hampshire. And when you're responding to an immediate incident, you need to know the intelligence of what's occurring. But what I was saying, look, it is qualitatively different dealing with a country once they have nuclear weapons. It's why you prevent them from getting nuclear weapons in the first place, because your hands are somewhat tied once they have nukes. It's why this Iranian nuclear deal is so catastrophic, and it's why I pledged on the very first day in office to rip to shreds this Iranian nuclear deal, so we're not sitting here in 5 years wondering what to do about an Iranian missile launch when they have nuclear weapons. The stakes are too high for that.
Okay. Senator Cruz, I will say that missile has been sitting there for quite some time, and they have had eyes on it.
Martha, just to clarify on that point, because he's right, and one more thing to point, it is standard procedure of the United States to shoot down those missiles once launched if they pose a threat to civilians, land, or ships.
Senator Rubio, I'm talking about a preemptive strike on the launch pad.
No, I understand, and but I think it's important to note that it is, and Senator Cruz I think was alluding to this as well, it is the standard procedure of the United States, if in fact those missiles pose a threat to land, civilians, our allies, or any of our assets, to shoot down that missile in mid-flight. I understand your question was about a preemptive strike, but my point is that there is in place now contingencies to avoid any sort of that strike from going errant and destroying any assets of the United States or implicating or hurting any of our allies or any of our assets in the region.
Okay, thank you, Senator Rubio. Governor Kasich, how would you respond to tonight's launch?
Well, we've got to step up the pressure. And by the way, I've got to say, after being here, every one of my 100 town hall meetings in New Hampshire were a lot more fun than what I saw here today. We're so much more positive. Look, in terms of North Korea, Martha, we have to make sure that we intercept both the ships and their aircraft, because what they're trying to do is to proliferate this very dangerous material along with the technology, the instruments that can be used for mass destruction. That's what I worry about the most, frankly, is non-state actors, people who don't have a uniform, people who don't have a country, who can spread this, who are not subject to the mutual assured defense. In other words, you strike us, we strike you. Some of these radicals, they don't care about that. That's what I worry about for my children and for their children going forward. So we have to be very tough, and we should tell the Chinese, look, if you're not going to do this, ballistic missile defense to Koreans, ballistic missile defense to Japan, and by the way, we should impose the same kind of sanctions on North Korea that we imposed on Iran, because they're able to shift money. They're able to send money and receive money. We've got to be very tough on this, and frankly, I think we could have let the Japanese know that if you want to take action on that missile that's rising, you want to take action, you will have our support if that's what you think is the best thing to do. We cannot continue to be weak in the face of the North Koreans, or frankly, in the entire rest of the world.
Martha, this relates to strategic patience.
I'll get to you in a moment.
This relates to the strategic patience of the Obama administration. They come up with these great marketing terms, and what they do is they pull back, and voids are filled, and they're now filled by asymmetric threats of terror as well as nation states on the run. The next president of the United States is going to have to get the United States back in the game, and if a preemptive strike is necessary to keep us safe, then we should do it.
Thank you, Governor Burns. Mr. Trump, do you have a red line with North Korea? Would you consider military action, and how far would you let them go?
Well, let me say a couple of things. First of all, Marco said earlier on that President Obama knows exactly what he's doing, like we have this president that really knows. I disagree respectfully with Marco. I think we have a president who, as a president, is totally incompetent, and he doesn't know what he's doing. I think he has no idea what he's doing, and our country is going to hell. So I just want to say we disagree on that. Is that okay?
Yeah, I got mentioned. Good. Can I respond?
And I'd like you to finish the question, please.
As to North Korea, we have tremendous has been just sucked out of our country by China. China says they don't have that good a control over North Korea. They have tremendous control. I deal with the Chinese all of the time. I do tremendous business. The largest bank in the world is in one of my buildings in Manhattan. I deal with them. They tell me they have total, absolute control, practically, of North Korea. They are sucking trillions of dollars out of our country. They're rebuilding China with the money they take out of our country. I would get on with China. Let China solve that problem. They can do it quickly and surgically. That's what we should do with North Korea.
Senator Rubio, you were mentioned.
Here's the broader point as well, and I think it touches on what Donald just mentioned. Barack Obama views America as this arrogant global power that needed to be cut down to size, okay? This is a president that views this country as a country that's been too powerful in the world, and we create problems around the world. For example, it's one of the reasons why he has betrayed Israel, because he believes if we create separation from Israel, it will help our relations in the Islamic world. The same is happening in the Asia-Pacific region with accommodations to North Korea. North Koreans should be back on the list of terrorist nations, as an example. And Donald's absolutely right. China does have a lot of influence over North Korea, and he should be leveraging our relationship with the Chinese to ensure that North Korea no longer has access to the resources that have allowed him to, a country that has no economy, to develop long-range missiles already capable of reaching the west coast of the United States potentially.